Today I'm working on pencil bag tags in the hoop. Bag tags, I'm going to show you how I make them. So I am going to take my hoop and go ahead and hoop wash away stabilizer. I do use tear away pretty often, and it really just depends on the day, to be honest. Kind of depends on the project, but not really. They're pretty interchangeable for me. So I'm going to go ahead and hoop wash away, and I am using my Mighty hoops. You can use any hoop. It does not have to be a Mighty hoop, just anything so that the stabilizer is really taut. Definitely don't want it to have any give or to wrinkle up on itself. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on the machine and let the first stitch out, which is going to be the eraser of the pencil. And it's just going to be the placement stitch so that I know where to put my fabric. And I know it's going to be right there because I've already stitched this several times. And there is the design. I've already programmed in the different colors. I do have a 10 needle embroidery machine. It's a Brother Entrepreneur Pro. But you can do this on any embroidery machine. You can do it on a single needle flatbed too. So I'm going to go ahead and let it sew out the first step, which is the eraser. So I do have stops built in. That's what that hand means after each one of these steps. And each one of these steps is a different fabric color. So there's, first it stitches out the placement like that. And then the next one is going to be exactly the same stitch, except it's meant to be the material where you put the fabric down. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pink fabric for the eraser. So I went ahead and picked out this cute little striped pink, and I'm just going to iron it good, make sure the creases are out. And I cut a tiny, I wrinkled it. I cut a tiny piece of Heat and Bond Light, and I'm going to put the shiny side down there, and it fits. I already cut it to make sure it fits, and iron on the paper side. And then I'm going to let that cool and then peel the paper off and add that to my design. So there's my fabric with the Heat and Bond on one side. I'm going to put Heat and Bond down. You can spray with a little adhesive. I don't on sections that are this small. I don't feel like it's really that necessary, but on the bigger pieces, it might be a good idea because they tend to wrinkle a little more. So now we're going to stitch the material for the eraser, which is just a single stitch to hold it down. And then I know that the next step is going to be the wood part of the pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and let that stitch out on my stabilizer also. I went ahead and prepped all my fabrics with Heat and Bond Light just so I don't have to keep stopping. So for the wood of the pencil, for the lead of the pencil, this is the body of the pencil, and then I need one for the backing of the whole pencil. So there's the placement, and we're going to tack it down in the next step. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take this off and cut those two out just like I would any applique, because to stitch on the body of the pencil and the lead of the pencil, I don't want that fabric to be underneath. These are Fisker scissors that I've been using the most. I do absolutely love these Ginger scissors for applique, but the only problem with magnetic hoops is you're constantly fighting the magnet. So it's just not worth it. These are plastic on the top, so they don't stick. Okay, I'm going to put it back on the machine for the placement and tack down stitches for the body of the pencil and the lid. So at this point, I am going to take it off the machine and go ahead and spray it with a little bit of adhesive, just temporary adhesive. There are a lot of options, a lot of good brands, but this is my favorite, 505. I just want to spray it so that that yellow fabric stays put and doesn't get wrinkled as it stitches around. So rather than take this off the machine and cut that now, I'm just going to do this and hold it back. I guess you could just cut that edge, but I'm just going to do this. This is what I've been doing, and let the lead stitch out real quick. Again, my heat and bond fabric. I'm not going to bother with spraying it with adhesive right there because it's so small. It'll be fine. So now I am going to take that off the machine and cut out those fabrics. And then I'm going to go ahead and press them so that the heat and bond light locks in and doesn't get wrinkled with the rest of the stitching. So the heat and bond light is for stability, but also more so for fraying. It keeps the fabric from fraying especially when the satin stitch pierces it so many times that it could cause the just plain fabric to rip and to fray. Okay, so I am going to iron this. I love my little heat press. You could just use a regular iron too. Again, with the magnetic frames, the iron tends to want to stick to the frame. So I like my little heat press there. So at this point, the next step is going to be the backing, but you would want to put any font or design or whatever you want on here. If you want a name on there, you would want to put it on at this point. So the next step is going to be backing that is going to stitch all the way around. So I'm just going to put yellow fabric on the back. I'm also going to put foam under here, but I wanted to go ahead and say that if you do want the back to look just like the front, you can go back to the beginning and do all these steps again, except put the fabric on this side. So you could have done it to begin with. If I'd wanted to, I could have put pink fabric on this side, pink fabric on that side, but I do like to put foam or felt or something in between mine. And so at this point, if you wanted the back to match, you could lay your foam down and then go back and restitch each step as you just did. So I do try to use foam or felt that matches my design as best I can. So I'm going to use yellow. I'm going to give it a little spray with the spray adhesive and then put the foam down. And then I'm going to peel the backing off of my fabric. Give it another little spray. Put that down, making sure it's over the pencil, and then my trusty painter's tape is good for everything. I'm going to put that on there to keep the foam from falling off. The fabric should be good, but I'm also going to hold it just to make sure. So I'm going to put it back on the machine like that, and it's going to stitch just a bean stitch around the entire outer edge that's going to attach the backing to the front. Let me just go ahead and say too that I know a lot of people put the foam on top. I usually just prefer to put it on the bottom. In this case, it's just easier with all the different fabrics. And it also, if you put a name on it, sometimes the name sinks down into the foam, and I don't prefer that look. So I just put the foam on the back. It just works out easier in most cases. So let's stitch the backing on. I did just use white thread to stitch around it. It doesn't really matter what color you use because it's all going to be covered up by the satin stitch. So now I'm taking it off the hoop again, and I'm going to cut the back fabric. I do not cut the foam because once the satin stitch like pierces it so many times, I don't know why that is shaking. Once the satin stitch pierces it so many times, the foam just tears off super easy, and that is so much easier than cutting it. I could use my favorite scissors right now. This would be even better because they don't stick on the back. And it's hard to see because of the shadow. I should have got my light out. But that is the backing. So I'm going to put it back on the machine, and it is going to stitch the satin edges around the pink, around the yellow, and then the tan and the black. And then we'll talk about the buttonhole next. And I'm going to go ahead and just iron the heat and bond on the backing too. So the satin stitch has stitched out. And the next thing is going to be the metal silver part right here on the pencil. So the silver stitched out, and next is going to be a bean stitch that is going to stitch up here. That is going to outline the buttonhole. Okay, so this is something that I do that most people don't do. I do a bean stitch to outline my buttonhole, and then I like to cut it out now so that the satin stitch is mostly clean around the edges. So I have my little cutting mat, and then I have this OESD tool that I like. I know a lot of people use a leather punch. You can just use whatever if you want, or you can just wait and cut it out at the end. Whatever you want to do. So this only makes that size hole. I know that's why a lot of people like their leather punch. But I just go around and cut out the size that I want. And then I'm going to stick it back on the machine to stitch the satin around the buttonhole. This is the finished product right off the machine. It does need a little cleaning up. In the buttonhole, I just snip some stray threads, and then let's take it off the hoop. It's my favorite part. And then since we're doing wash away, I'm just going to tear off as much as I can. I'm going to go ahead and snip a few of the threads too. Because I know the wash away is not gonna, those aren't gonna go away with a washcloth. I've debated what color to put on the back. I think I might do white from now on. Or like a cute little teacher fabric would be adorable. Or like I said, you can go do the steps all over again and do pink, yellow, tan, and black. And that would be super cute too. But that way you have the name or whatever covered. People do ask me a lot of times if I change my bobbin, and I don't, but I also don't sell these. So I don't know. That's up to you. That's your own personal preference, I would say. But I mean, ideally, you're not looking at the back, you're looking at the front. Okay, my wash rag is slightly damp. And I'm just going to go around the edges. That stuff just does great. And I'll link everything that I used. And all the supplies that I really like. And of course, you can get this design at Laurel and Lily Designs on Etsy. And maybe someday if I ever get around to putting it on my website. Okay, a few more strings to clean up. I think that is so cute. Okay, I think she looks pretty good. I mean, I'm gonna go around it with a lighter, but I mean, I don't even see any foam sticking out. Maybe a little bit right there just because of the contrasting color. Yeah, definitely with the black, but it looks pretty good. Okay, let's see if I can show this shrinking foam on camera. Don't hold it on there super long, but the foam shrinks back. Not as much because it's wet. Oh, there we go. I have had the lighter held too close to the foam or held too close to the edge before, and the thread will start coming up like a little bit. Just a few threads will start coming up, and that's a little unnerving. But if you're not comfortable using a lighter around the edge, totally understand. And you can always use an iron. I've heard people do that. I don't do that, but I've heard of people doing that. I think right there, I would honestly take just a black marker and color it in if I was doing this for somebody. This is just my sample, but I might need to give it to somebody. It's so cute. It's hard for me to do this on camera, but look at that. Sharpie to the rescue. So if you want the back of your tag to look like the same fabrics as the front, you're going to need to get to this point. There's nothing on the back yet. Next step is the one that stitches all the way around the outside edge, and that's where I've designed it to put a backing on. But if you want it to have fabric that matches each of the front fabrics, you will need to go on your machine and go back to step 1 and redo all of these steps except for the words. So let's do that. And I'm going to go ahead and put my felt on here. I just like to do it on the back. I like it to be on the back and to cover up all of the font and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and spray adhesive, my felt on there, and then I'm going to tape it so that it doesn't come off. the step that stitches all the way around the outside, but instead I'm going to go back to the very beginning. So it's going to stitch the eraser again. And I'm going to go through all the same steps again. It's hard to see, but the eraser is stitched on there. And I'm going to add my fabric. Okay, there's the front and the back. And so now we're going to put it back on the machine and let all the satin stitch out.